Hello everyone, welcome back to Touch the Fire Twice. I'm Joshua, and I'm here today to do a collective haul and first impressions overview of 8 candles from Bath & Body Works White Barn Candle Company. But first, if you're new to Touch the Fire Twice, welcome. My mission here is to share my love and passion for fine home fragrance as an enthusiast, an educator, a reviewer, to inspire you to increase your own fragrance knowledge and understanding, ultimately enhancing the scent memories that you create. If you want to learn more about what I do, why I do it, how I do it, you can check out my website at TouchTheFireTwice.com and follow me over on Instagram and TikTok at Touch the Fire Twice. But for now, let's dig into these candles. So this is a, let's call it late spring collective haul. Most of these candles were purchased either in-store at recent sales, primarily I think the buy one, get one free sale, or online when I was purchasing for some of the recent ice cream shop limited edition candle drops. And as this is a collective haul and first impressions overview, that differs a bit from my more traditional in-depth sniff and comparison reviews. And so I'll give my first impression of the fragrance, or if I have burned it, I will give my overall quick impression of that. But it differs from my in-depth sniff and comparison reviews, where I spend time really digging into a scent, explore the notes, and compare it to other similar fragrances to really pick through, it's like this, it's not like that, the lemon is like this, the sage is not like that, that sort of thing. So you can really build that scent in your mind's nose to understand if it's a fragrance that you may enjoy. But do let me know if there are any fragrances from this haul and first impressions overview that you'd like to see me do the in-depth sniff comparison on. There are 1 or 2 candles here that are kind of sticking out to me that I think would make sense for an in-depth sniff and comparison review, but I'd like to hear what you all want to watch. So first up, we'll go to this collection here. This is sort of your Mediterranean coast of Greece collection. I'm not sure the official name for it, but I like the overall aesthetic. You've got this kind of opaque matte white glass, these really pretty matte navy, kind of almost royal, but navy blue metal lids. And then this sort of, let's call it kind of hand-painted look, this watercolor, or if you were doing kind of calligraphy with the names and a watercolor painting for the image. I think it's, you know, it's cute, it's cohesive across the collection, and it's a little bit fresh and new from other collections at Bath & Body Works. And so first up in this, we've got Riviera Petals with the notes of rose petals, white tea stem, and fresh geranium. Getting my nose on this. I have burned this one once. I like it. It is, I wouldn't think of it necessarily as a floral from Greece or the Mediterranean or coastal necessarily. It is fresh. The rose feels a little bit powdery, dewy rose, not super intense, kind of a soft rose. Soft, dewy, young rose. Saying the petals, to me that means maybe a little bit less intense. It's not the entire flower right up in your face, just a couple of petals strewn about. White tea stem, that's interesting. White tea is just a much milder tea. It's going to be I think the youngest tea buds versus your green tea or your black tea, the least processed versus, you know, black tea that is aged and or oxidized and dried. The white tea is going to be very fine, very light. The stem, okay, I don't know. Frankly, we generally only ingest tea leaves. I don't think stems are part of the equation, so I'm assuming that just means that it's going to be a little bit more vegetal, perhaps, or green. Some plants that are edible, if you eat the stems, they are just as good as the leaves. So think cilantro, the stem's just as flavorful as the leaves. Other things, you're getting most of the fragrance and the taste in the leaves, less so in the stems. So I don't know exactly what a white tea stem is. It's the first time I've seen a note like that in fragrance. I suppose there's a light freshness when you think of like white tea and jasmine and some of the other white tea or tea fragrances of Bath & Body Works that are more in the natural botanical aromatherapeutic versus your, you know, porch teas, your sweet teas, that sort of thing. There is sort of a light freshness that I suppose is from that kind of white tea. And finally, geranium is often considered rose-like, but a bit greener, less powdery, and almost more of kind of a lemony citrus or herbaceous edge to a rose. For me, almost more vegetal, kind of soft, but a potent warm green scent. And I certainly get that in here. So if you think of the blush, geranium, and fern 3-wick candle that came out earlier this spring, this is in that fragrance family to me, but a little bit sweeter because of the rose petals in here and that calming white tea. I think I like this one better. The blush, geranium, and fern, to me, is a bit more musty and almost a bit of a dankness to it. It also actually reminds me of a little bit of a scent from years ago, I think 2012 White Barn called Lily Pond. Might have been a failed test scent. That was just a bit like this, where it's a floral, a little bit dewy, borderline musty or soapy, but not quite. So that's that. Next up from the same collection is Santorini Coast. Notes of creamy coconut, almond blossom, and warm vanilla. I like this one a fair amount. It's not as good as I want it to be. I love almond blossom fragrances. I don't love coconut. Actually, I like a lot of coconut fragrances, but I'm not someone who runs to coconut specifically, but a lot of fragrances that I enjoy happen to have coconut in them, but I'm not a specific coconut fan, if that makes sense. But putting those two together, I think makes a lot of sense. The vanilla, of course, with both of those also totally tracks, but to me, this is actually a little bit reminiscent of the fresh coconut and cotton fragrance of Bath & Body Works, which was a candle day, late 2022, and then Signature Body Care in spring. Similar to that, I like that more. That's actually more beachy in some ways for me. This is nice. It's just sort of a warm, comforting, calming fragrance. I wish there was a little bit more going on, or that maybe the almond blossom was a bit stronger. It's one of those very natural coconut, more like maybe coconut meat, unsweetened, or even like the coconut husk. Very dry coconut. There's no sweetness to this really, except maybe from the vanilla, which doesn't give that much sweetness. So this is a comforting home fragrance that is, I would actually say, summer appropriate, warm weather appropriate, but doesn't scream coast or tropics. Because there's no sort of hot white floral in this, and there's nothing dewy, it doesn't give me powdery, beachy at all, but it is nice. I've not burned it yet, so it could get better or worse when I burn that, but I do always give fragrances a try if they have almond blossom in them. Moving on to this collection, which is, I was almost gonna say a ripoff, but yeah, kind of a maybe that's a bit extreme. But when we talk about pricing, nowadays, most of their candles are $26.95 at Bath & Body Works. Sometimes you get a $24.95, which you'll see here. And then they do the collections that generally just tend to have a more decorative lid and are sometimes $29.95, or in this case, $32.95. And yes, it comes with this textured glass lid with a little bit of iridescence to it, but it's not worth $8 more. It's not a special candle, a higher concentration of oils, a more complex master perfumer blend, not a special launch. It's just a collection of 4 to 6 fragrances, of which I was not interested in any except this one, in, a traditional wraparound label, straightforward, inoffensive, almost kind of like watercolor brush strokes. The major gripe I have is, I actually prefer this clean blue metal lid, and with the candle being the same size, quality, all of that, $8 difference for a glass lid is just ridiculous. It's not that special. I'd rather them not include it. It's really just a way to grab additional dollars from us and start to nudge up the candle cost. So $29.95 was pushing it, but $32.95, $33, you can get a luxury candle for less than $33 oftentimes. Granted, I didn't pay that for this. The other thing I'll say is these lids are borderline defective. So it has your traditional gasket on there, but they do not stay on. They do not stay on. You push them, pull them, squeeze them, bop it, whatever. They might as well be as good as just sitting it on there like this. It really does not stay. So charge me more for what I would argue is actually an inferior product, just bad quality control. And this is actually something that I believe was communicated from headquarters to stores, that these lids would not stay on, which is like, all right, so you knew that, like, just come on. It's just whatever. It's just dumb. But more importantly, the reason I purchased it is for the scent, for the wax inside this jar. The name, if I didn't already mention it, is Flower Cart. Notes of floral bouquets, fresh cut stems, and lush greenery. Boy, they really couldn't give us anything more from there. You're talking flowers, the stems attached to the flowers, and greenery attached to the stems, or just, baby's breath, greenery, leaves, palm, something added in. I was hopeful that this would be similar to Garden Bouquet from back 2012, or Garden Party from 2014, or Flower Shop from 2011 through back and forth throughout, like, let's say the mid-aughts. Beautiful fragrances, all 3 of those. This one, get my nose on it. This is a post-burn review. It's fine. It's floral. It's kind of powdery. They don't mention dewy, which I would have assumed based on stems and floral bouquets and greenery. Typically, you're gonna have something kind of dewy or watery in there, or green and astringent, or green and vegetal. I get a little bit of green, almost more like a warm summer day, like a bit of a fresh cut grass accord. Some powdery florals in there, a pretty straightforward, mixed bouquet, but hard to pick out a specific floral. Not really hot white florals, not your seductive, Gardenia or your sweet, intense jasmines. It's a clean scent. But in addition to that, I also get a bit of like almost the suntan candle vibes, that kind of laundry slash cotton, fresh towels vibe that you get from suntan. There's also coconut in that. There's no coconut in this, but it's very much fresh summer floral, but a little bit generic actually. It's not the super unique scent that I was expecting from something called Flower Cart in an expensive collection, which clearly it doesn't make a difference, with stems and greenery attached to it. I think more, frankly, kind of boring, like the blush geranium and fern candle. Not quite as musty or vegetal as that, but it's really just fine. I have burned it twice and I have no interest really to burn it again. I don't like to return candles after I've burned them unless there's something defective with them. So I'll probably hold on to this one, but certainly I will exchange the second one that I purchased. All right, let's go through these a little bit faster. Those are the newest scents. The others are returning favorites or new to me, and I can go a little faster through these. First up from this collection, where there's just this kind of simple design. It's not a wraparound label. It's a colored wax. It's actually a pretty straightforward, kind of classic Bath & Body Works design with a bit of the sort of photorealistic artwork on here and just a framing of the candle name. This, of course, is the classic Fresh Cut Lilacs. Notes lilac bouquets, dewy greens, and soft spring air. Now, as you can see with these more, let's call it simple candles, they retail for $24.95 versus the $26.95 here or the $32.95 here. Really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It could be argued that those other ones have an elevated aesthetic, but not necessarily. This still has, a different lid than your typical Bath & Body Works insignia. I don't frankly care kind of either way. But Fresh Cut Lilacs, I think everyone knows this. This has been around since, at least 2008 or 9. Very traditional spring floral. Now, this is a candle that I don't often buy. I've probably only purchased this 2 or 3 times ever in my time purchasing and collecting these candles. It's just so incredibly authentic to lilacs. It is the powdery, it is the sweetness, is a little bit of green. You have those dewy greens in there. The soft spring air is because it's not overly sweet. There's a dewy, light freshness to this, but not super powdery, not heady, not seductive. It's a sweet, innocent spring lilac. And it's nothing more, nothing less than that, other than it's incredibly authentic smelling. If that's the fragrance you're going after, this is the candle for you. For me, I like it. It's just not exciting. It doesn't feel like a really intense, complex blend, which I want those ones where it's like, oh my gosh, I've never smelled anything like this. This gets an A for authenticity. It smells like you have a bouquet of lilacs on your counter. Then we go to a new fragrance, I believe, Fresh Mint and Tea Tree. Notes on this one, bright spearmint, tea tree, and rosemary. Now, if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you know that I'm generally into these fresh, aromatherapeutic, herbal fragrances. So the notes, the mint, tea tree, and rosemary, right up my alley. I have burned this a couple of times. I really like this. It is straightforward. It's not as complex or unique as I think it should have been or certainly could be, but it's very nice. It has that soft, sweet spearmint. It doesn't go overly sweet like just a straightforward spearmint candle sometimes does. It does go a little bit towards, some people say this will smell like gum or toothpaste to them. I think the fact that it has the tea tree in it, which brings kind of an astringency to it, takes away from it being gum, candy, toothpaste, and it adds a bit of a depth to it that I really enjoy. I do like tea tree. Tea tree really adds that almost darker, more intensely astringent, camphoraceous fragrance. And rosemary is similar to both of those, where it can be camphoraceous, not quite minty, but has almost a piney aspect to it. I get very little of the rosemary. I probably would not have called that out if it wasn't in the notes, just in a blind sniff. But I do believe that it could be there. There's one candle this does remind me a bit of, which is I think One and Done 2017 White Barn Peppermint Rosemary, I believe it was. Not a repackage, but similar fragrance family where it's not quite full-on herbal, not quite aromatherapy, but somewhere in the middle there where there is that mint, but clearly a fresh mint, not a foodie mint really, and not a holiday mint. I think this is really nice. Again, straightforward, similar actually to Fresh Cut Lilacs, where this is just a straightforward fragrance, not a ton going on, but nice. Same here. This is a bit straightforward, not a ton going on, but quite nice. I would probably buy another one of these just because it's so pleasing. It's a nice blend of fragrances that I like, that are a bit grounding, good throw, and just nice overall. Then we get into the final three here. First up is Under the Magnolia Tree in the wraparound label, so you guessed it, $26.95 retail on that. Decorative gold lid, and just the small label down here that is embossed. This is fine. It's a little like Febreze commercial backgrounds or like an allergy commercial backgrounds. It's not offensive. I'm sure plenty of folks think it's pretty and nice and whatever. I could take it or leave it. But the scent is interesting. Notes on this one: Magnolia Petals, Lemon Zest, and Peach Blossoms. Now, before I get my nose on this, there was a Southern Magnolia circa 2012, I believe. Failed test scent, came back, then was called White Barn Summer. Might have come back one or two other times. I've seen a Southern Magnolia, I want to say online. Recently, I don't know that it's the same fragrance as back in the day, but that was a beautiful Southern floral, kind of in the, for me, like a hot August floral, but not tropical, not beachy florals, not hot white florals, kind of like your honeysuckle. To me, Magnolia and honeysuckle really are hand in hand for just a hot summer day on a porch kind of fragrance. This one is not like that. It is nice. I have not burned it yet. It is nice, but it is incredibly fresh from that lemon zest. The Magnolia, I do believe, is there because it is in the family of Southern Magnolia. That was hot, warm, round, just intensely hot floral. This is fresh floral, sweet with that lemon zest, really a pretty version of lemon. Peach blossoms, now fruit blossoms are not always going to be super similar to the fruit that they're blossom of. So you think orange blossoms, there's a bit of an orange scent to it, but it's heavy on the floral. And other fruits, sometimes it's spot on, sometimes it is, you couldn't even tell that this was a blossom from X fruit. For me, I'm not sure what peach blossom smells like on its own. If it really smells just like peaches, I'm assuming it's at least reminiscent. Knowing that, I don't really get a peach in here. I believe that could be peach blossoms, because certainly I think there's more than just Magnolia Petals in here. But I actually appreciate that, because if this was too heavy on sort of the traditional peach that you get at Bath & Body Works, which leans kind of, peach gummy ring or musty, overly ripened, borderline fermented peach nectar, meaning nectar of like, let's call it like the just juice, not nectar from the flower. I wouldn't like this if it was that. It would be too heavy on the peach, heavy on that bright sparkling lemon and the floral of Magnolia. This is fresh, bright. The more I'm smelling this, I actually do like this a lot. You must like lemon though, because it is heavily lemon for a floral, but you don't really get florals with much lemon in them typically. So yeah, this is more lemon forward and happens to have Magnolia in it. Under the Magnolia Tree, I suppose it could be conceptual. I don't know, you're peeling a lemon to make lemonade while sitting under the Magnolia Tree. Not sure, but at least on first impression, I do appreciate it. Then we've got two true classics. First one was actually from an online order I did, because this is an online exclusive for this year, and that is Fresh Bamboo. This is a classic from Slacken era, if not before. So strong, really one of those scents that I consider a room cleaner. It will clear out any fragrance. It's a nice one to burn when you have the windows open and you're cleaning, and truly aromatherapeutic. This packaging, it's kind of exotic, it's fun. The zebra's a little extra, but these huge leaves with all of the different filled colors with the gold leaf attached to it is nice, and I do like that it's wraparound, but you still are seeing some of the wax shining through. That's a nice touch in my mind. Probably gets almost a little illuminary style once you at least get to see the glow of the candle through the leaves. Notes on this one: sweet bamboo, lush jasmine, and wild grasses. I think most folks know and either probably love or hate this fragrance because it's typically, yes, very strong. It is like sticking your nose deep into a flower where you're almost getting some powder from the pollen, like a daisy, like fresh cut grass, like your spring candles. Dewy, grassy, certainly that wild sweet bamboo. Very green, vegetal, botanical. The jasmine is certainly there as a powdery floral, but the bamboo and the grass actually overpower the jasmine, which is hard to do because jasmine's usually gonna push through anything in my mind. But it's really up against some heavy hitters with the other notes in here. And I really this is such a classic, and I didn't think that I saw it in store this year, and they had it a year or two ago where I bought 2 or 3, but it tends to be one of those classic fragrances that doesn't often come back, so grab that, because I wanted to have that back up. And then finally, a fragrance that is one of the most popular, probably for the past 10 years, I believe, at Bath & Body Works, has repackaged a million times, a million ways, and now just comes in straightforward in the White Barn collection, but I've actually never purchased it in the past. And that is White Gardenia, with notes of classic white gardenia, fresh picked greenery, sweet apple, and white tuberose. This is very close to an authentic gardenia. I will say the fresh cut gardenia from Lofco is more authentic, maybe not as quite as sweet as this, but truly a next level elevated gardenia. If you love gardenia, if you love this candle and you want to explore fine fragrance, luxury fragrances, check out Lofco's fresh cut gardenia. This one is quite nice. There is a little bit of kitchen sink going on with this one. I think they could have actually simplified this in the same way that they have the fresh cut lilac simplified, where that smells like almost true to life. This smells like a gardenia fragrance, but not truly fresh cut gardenias in a vase. With the greenery, okay, that's fine. Apple, sweet apple, I don't really get that. I wouldn't argue that it's not in here, but certainly not something I would pick out there. It doesn't seem fruity to me. It seems more floral and green. The tuberose, I do feel like I might pick out some of that. Tuberose is gonna smell similar to lilies, but a richness. They say almost of like a creme brulee or a sweet honey, so almost a gourmand floral. This doesn't lean gourmand, but there is a kind of, I suppose, a sweetness, but it is really like the powdery white sweetness, but without being that hot white kind of summer floral. Traditional, pretty, leans. Though fresh, the greenery does keep it kind of fresh from being overly powdery or rich honeyed-like, which to me would then lean towards like perfume. It's nice, not my favorite, but good to have just sort of a straightforward floral spring into summer. And so that is why I wanted to give white gardenia a try. So that is my collective haul and first impressions overview. Again, no real major hits for me, nothing where I do that sort of inhale and, oh, that's so good, kind of sigh test, as I've realized, like the candles that I love the most, I inhale them and there's just that sigh afterwards where you just want to live in the scent and experience that scent in the moment. A few of these are good, a few of them are meh, they're fine. And again, at least one of them is being returned, the flower cart, the backup that I purchased of it, at least for the buy one, get one. Probably keep this on hand, perhaps to burn or just to have as a comparison for future reviews, quite frankly. So, not particularly exciting. We'll see what summer holds. Bath & Body Works, this is probably the last spring haul. The spring collections, I believe, are pretty much out on the floor, and we're starting to get into the summer scents as we get deeper into late spring, into May and June, of course. But so let me know if there are any in here that you'd be interested in seeing a more in-depth sniff and comparison review. I tend to go on and on in these collective hauls and talk through most of what I would say in those reviews, but certainly there are some candles already coming to my mind that I could do a side-by-side comparison review if I do the in-depth sniff and comparison on a couple of these candles. So do let me know if there's any that you want to hear more about. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.